Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome. Oh, wow, we haven't done anything yet. Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Joe Salvatore, and I'm your host for the Inauguration Project. So thank you for being here. And for everyone in the theater, we appreciate you coming in person. And for everyone on the live stream, thank you for being here as well. So we've got live stream happening. We've got you in the theater. We look forward to you being here. We are celebrating Constitution Day, which is actually today, which we are lucky to be celebrating on the actual day of the federal observance of the signing by the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia on September 17th, 1787. So that is the arrival of the Constitution of the United States. And so we are to celebrate that. NYU celebrates this every year. And so we have created this performance. The Verbatim Performance Lab has created a performance that you're going to see this evening. So the Verbatim Performance Lab is a project of the Program in Educational Theater in the Department of Music and Performing Arts Professions at NYU Steinhardt School. And we are co-sponsored this evening by NYU TV, who is providing the live stream, and the John Brademas Center. And the John Brademas Center of New York University pursues a collection of initiatives in the area that form the core of John Brademas's life in public service. And John Brademas was a congressman and also a president of NYU. And so with a growing reputation as a home for informed and civil debate on politics, public policy, and other major issues facing the nation, they are also celebrating their 20th anniversary as a center at NYU this year, and we're pleased to have them as a co-sponsor of this project and this performance. Exactly, yes. We're also really happy to have two guest respondents this evening to respond to the performance, and that is Patrick Egan and Emily Fader. So thanks for being here, and we'll welcome you up to the stage after we've experienced the performance. Okay, so what are you about to experience? So 2025 is the 100th anniversary of the first broadcast of a presidential inaugural address. So on March 4th, 1925, Calvin Coolidge was sworn in as president, and with the help of AT&T, an estimated 22,800,000 people heard that broadcast while he was giving it live. And so we take this for granted now that we can see these speeches at any point, but that was sort of a major moment in history, and I think it's safe to say that that has impacted how we experience presidents and their messages going forward. I was reading a little bit about Calvin Coolidge, and Calvin Coolidge, apparently his voice was not as strong as other presidents. And there was concern when he ran for this election because the president before him, William Harding, died, and so he was the vice president and became the president. And he was concerned to do the speeches because he didn't have a strong voice. And so he also didn't like the radio. He was not a fan of the radio until he started delivering speeches over the radio, and people said, oh, he has a very fine voice for the radio. And so he ended up giving some 40 radio addresses during his presidency as a result of sort of learning that he had a good voice for the radio. So again, these are very interesting questions for us to consider about how people engage with a president's message when it's broadcast. And so as we're moving through the event this evening, I'd like for you to keep this question in mind. How do you engage with the president's inaugural address and their vision for the United States of America when the president's identity is unknown to you? Okay, so how are we going to do this experiment with you? Earlier this year, we worked with a research dramaturg and our lab interns to review all of the presidential inaugurals since 1925. We looked for recurring patterns in the speeches and then chose a particular theme that emerged, and then selected 5 excerpts each from a different president who has held the office since 1969. So there are 10 presidents who've sat in the who have been president since 1969. So those 10 presidents are possibilities. We have 5 actors who have each been assigned one of those excerpts, and they've studied the transcript and recording of the speech, and they've prepared a verbatim performance of that excerpt. A verbatim performance is a precise portrayal of an actual person using their exact speech and gestural patterns as a data source for investigation. And so tonight, together with you in the audience and the actors on stage, we're going to do that investigation, all right? So if you could join me in welcoming the 5 actors on stage who are going to do this investigation. We have Mary Walker, Susie Jane Hunt, Kevin Sheehan, Ryan Vandenboom, and Ashley Thaxton Stevenson. Great. All right, so when you came in, you got one of these cards, okay? So you have the front, you have the back. On the back of the card, there's a grid, okay? And or a table. And at the top of it, it says audience activation. And we're going to experience these speech excerpts in 2 rounds, all right? And as we experience them, you're not going to know who is speaking. We'd like for you to take a guess, all right? So you should have gotten a fancy Steinhardt pen when you came in also. Those pens are brand new, so they might have a little thing on the end of them to keep them leaking. So when you start to write, you might have to flick the end off the pen, okay? But you're going to hear a first round, and you've got a column there to put your guesses. A, B, C, D, E are the presidents that you'll hear from. The presidential bank of those 10 names is at the top. So we've given you some guides, all right? In the 2 rounds, you're going to hear the same words, but they're going to be delivered in a different way each time. So in the first round, you're going to hear a loose verbatim version of the speech, which means that the actor will deliver their speeches. They'll perform the speech cadence and gestures of the president, but in their natural voice and body movements, all right? So if a president is making, this kind of gesture, rather in the first round, me making that gesture, I might make this gesture because that's how I would move, okay? So they'll be doing the choreography, but in their own bodies, okay? They'll also be speaking in their own voices, but in the rhythm of the original speaker, all right? The second time you hear them, they'll be doing what we call tight verbatim, which means that they're going to go for it, right? They're going to do the gesture and voice of the original speaker as closely as they possibly can, all right? So they've been studying the recordings, the transcripts, and rehearsing this voice and gestural patterns, okay? So after you've had a chance to hear both rounds, we're going to ask you to go onto your phones again, and we're going to give you a survey, and we're going to ask you to guess who is President A, B, C, and D, and E, 5, okay? And we're going to look at the results each time, and then we're going to reveal who the president is, all right? So is everybody clear on that so far? Now, so far you have 2 jobs, listening and guessing. You do have a third job, okay? So your third job is that you've been seeing images on the screen behind me throughout this opening. As we worked on these speeches, there are moments in some of them where the audience applauded. It's a rousing speech, the audience applauds. We're going to need for you to applaud, all right? So you are playing a significant role in our execution of these speeches. So we're going to practice, okay? So generally speaking, you'll see a slide like this, but when we need you to applaud, we're going to see this, okay? Oh, great, wow. All right, look at that. We might not even have to practice, but we're going to do it anyway. Okay, so I'm going to read you a section of Calvin Coolidge's 1925 inaugural, and at a moment, Aubrey, our projection operator, is going to give you that applause sign, okay? And so you applaud until the slide goes away, all right? You're going to do 2 rounds of applause. I need the applause, all right? So here we go. All right, let's try it. So this is Calvin Coolidge, 1925. Realizing that we cannot live unto ourselves alone, we have contributed of our resources and our counsel to the relief of the suffering and the settlement of the disputes among the European nations. Because of what America is and what America has done, a firmer courage, a higher hope, inspires the heart of all humanity. These results have not occurred by mere chance. They have been secured by a constant and enlightened effort marked by many sacrifices and extending over many generations. We cannot continue these brilliant successes in the future unless we continue to learn from the past. Okay, you're all hired. Excellent, great, this is great. Okay, so everybody understands their jobs. Listening, guessing, applauding. Are you ready to begin? Okay, are you ready to begin? Excellent. All right, so let's get started with round one. And just as a reminder, this is in the loose verbatim, meaning the actors will perform the speech, cadence, and gestures of the president, but in their own natural voice and body movements. And we're going to begin with Mary.
The promise we sought in a new land, we will find again in a land of new promise. In this new land, education will be every citizen's most prized possession. Our schools will have the highest standards in the world, igniting the spark of possibility in the eyes of every girl and every boy. And the doors of higher education will be open to all. The knowledge and power of the information age will be within reach not just of the few, but of every classroom, every library, every child. Parents and children will have time not only to work, but to read and play together. And the plans they make at their kitchen table will be those of a better home, a better job, the certain chance to go to college. Our streets will echo again with the laughter of our children, because no one will try to shoot them or sell them drugs anymore. Everyone who can work will work, with today's permanent underclass part of tomorrow's growing middle class. New miracles of medicine at last will reach not only those who can claim care now, but the children and hardworking families too long denied. We will stand mighty for peace and freedom and maintain a strong defense against terror and destruction. Our children will sleep free from the threat of nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons. Ports and airports, farms and factories will thrive with trade and innovation and ideas. And the world's greatest democracy will lead a whole world of democracies.
Great, Mary. Thank you. Okay, so if you take a second, who do you think that is? Log that on your card. If you have no idea, that's also okay. And Susie, let's see B, please.
Above all else, the time has come for us to renew our faith in ourselves and in America. In recent years, that faith has been challenged. Our children have been taught to be ashamed of their country, ashamed of their parents, ashamed of America's record at home and its role in the world. At every turn, we have been beset by those who find everything wrong with America and little that is right. But I am confident that this will not be the judgment of history on these remarkable times in which we are privileged to live. America's record in this century has been unparalleled in the world's history for its responsibility, for its generosity, for its creativity, and for its progress. let us be proud that our system has provided and produced more freedom and more abundance, more widely shared than any system in the history of the world. Let us be proud that in each of the 4 wars in which we have been engaged in this century, including the one we are now bringing to an end, we have fought not for our selfish advantage, but to help others resist aggression. And let us be proud that by our bold new initiatives, by our steadfastness for peace with honor, we have made a breakthrough toward creating in the world what the world has not known before, a structure of peace that can last, not merely for our time, but for generations to come.
Thank you, Susie. Okay, thoughts about who that might be on your card? Kevin, please. President C.
Do not allow anyone to tell you that it cannot be done. No challenge can match the heart and fight and spirit of America. We will not fail. Our country will thrive and prosper again. We stand at the birth of a new millennium, ready to unlock the mysteries of space, to free the earth from the miseries of disease, and to harness the energies, industries, and technologies of tomorrow. A new national pride will stir our souls, lift our sights, and heal our divisions. It's time to remember that old wisdom our soldiers will never forget, that whether we are black or brown or white, we all bleed the same red blood of patriots. We all enjoy the same glorious freedoms, and we all salute the same great American flag. And whether a child is born in the urban sprawl of Detroit or the windswept plains of Nebraska, they all look up at the same night sky, they all fill their hearts with the same dreams, and they are infused with the breath of life by the same almighty Creator. So to all Americans, in every city near and far, small and large, from mountain to mountain, from ocean to ocean, hear these words: you will never be ignored again. Your voice, your hopes, and your dreams will define our American destiny, and your courage and goodness and love will forever guide us along the way.
Great, thank you, Kevin. All right, so lodge a guess for C, please, on your card. As you're thinking about these guesses, if there's a moment in the speech where you're like, oh, that was it for me, might be good to write that in the margin, all right? Okay, Ryan, please, President D.
So let us mark this day with remembrance of who we are, how far we have traveled. In the year of America's birth, in the coldest of months, a small band of patriots huddled by dying campfires on the shores of an icy river. The capital was abandoned, the enemy was advancing, the snow was stained with blood. At a moment when the outcome of our revolution was most in doubt, the father of our nation ordered these words be read to the people. Let it be told to the future world that in the depth of winter, when nothing but hope and virtue could survive, that the city and the country, alarmed at one common danger, came forth to meet it. America, in the face of our common dangers, in this winter of our hardship, let us remember these timeless words. With hope and virtue, let us brave once more the icy currents and endure what storms may come. Let it be said by our children's children that when we were tested, we refused to let this journey end, that we did not turn back, nor did we falter. And with eyes fixed on the horizon and God's grace upon us, carried forth that great gift of freedom and delivered it safely to future generations.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. All right, if you can make your guess, please, for President D. And to round out round one, Ashley, please, President E.
We are creating a nation once again vibrant, robust, and alive. But there are many mountains yet to climb. We will not rest until every American enjoys the fullness of freedom, dignity, and opportunity as our birthright. It is our birthright as citizens of this great republic, and if we meet this challenge, these will be years when Americans have restored their confidence and tradition of progress, when our values of faith, family, work, and neighborhood were restated for a modern age, when our economy was finally freed from government's grip, when we made sincere efforts at meaningful arms reductions and by rebuilding our defenses, our economy, and developing new technologies, helped preserve peace in a troubled world, when America courageously supported the struggle for individual liberty, self-government, and free enterprise throughout the world, and turned the tide of history away from totalitarian darkness and into the warm sunlight of human freedom. My fellow citizens, our nation is poised for greatness. We must do what we know is right and do it with all our might. Let history say of us, these were golden years when the American Revolution was reborn, when freedom gained new life, and America reached for her best. Our two-party system has served us, I should say, well over the years. But never better than in those times of great challenge when we came together not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Americans, united in a common cause.
Great, Ashley. Thank you for that. Okay, lodge a guess for President E, please. And just as a little palate cleanse here, it's like the sherbet course. Turn and talk to someone near you and compare notes. Okay, who do you think these folks are? Okay, turn and talk to compare some notes. Let's come back together. And that was I didn't know how that part was going to go, and you all were right in it. You were like, we got to talk about this. Okay, so that's great. So we're going to repeat the exact same set of transcripts. Okay, so the actors are going to perform the same words and gestures, but this time they're going to do it in what we call tight verbatim. And I just want to say something before we begin. You know, we are used to seeing a lot of satire of political figures, right? If any of you watch Saturday Night Live, you know Saturday Night Live traffics in satire. And sometimes when I explain to folks what I do, they're like, oh, it's like you do that thing on Saturday Night Live. And I want to be clear, that is not what we do, okay? We do not do that, okay? And so the actors have very carefully studied the gestures and words of these presidents, and now this tight verbatim performance is an attempt to get as close as possible to those original patterns, all right? So when you see these, you may have a reaction that is, you might be surprised, or you might find it amusing, but I just want to be clear that the intention is not amusement. The intention is to engage critically in the experience, all right? So just to say, we're going to move into that tight verbatim performance, and we're going to begin again with Mary, with President A.
The promise we sought In a new land, we will find again, in a land of no promise. In this new land, education will be every citizen's most prized possession. Our schools will have the highest standards in the world, igniting the spark of possibility in the eyes of every girl and every boy. And the doors of higher education will be open to all. The knowledge and power of the information age will be within reach not just of the few, but of every classroom, every library, every child. Parents and children will have time not only to work, but to read and play together. And the plans they make at their kitchen table will be those of a better home, a better job, the certain chance to go to college. Our streets will echo again with the laughter of our children, because no one will try to shoot them or sell them drugs anymore. Everyone who can work will work, with today's permanent underclass part of tomorrow's growing middle class. New miracles of medicine at last will reach not only those who can claim care now, but the children and hard-working families too long denied. We will stand mighty for peace and freedom and maintain a strong defense against terror and destruction. Our children will sleep free from the threat of nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons. Ports and airports, farms and factories will thrive with trade and innovation and ideas. And the world's greatest democracy will lead a whole world of democracies.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, so column 2, round 2, log your guess, okay? And if you could, take notice of how your guess maybe changes or remains the same and why, all right? So, Susie, please, President B.
Above all else, the time has come for us to renew our faith in ourselves and in America. In recent years, that faith has been challenged. Our children have been taught to be ashamed of their country, ashamed of their parents, ashamed of America's record at home and its role in the world. At every turn, we have been beset by those who'll find everything wrong with America and little that is right. But I am confident that this will not be the judgment of history on these remarkable times in which we are privileged to live. America's record in this century has been unparalleled in the world's history for its responsibility, for its generosity, for its creativity, and for its progress. Let us be proud that our system has produced and provided more freedom and more abundance, more widely shared than any system in the history of the world. Let us be proud that in each of the 4 wars in which we have been engaged in this century, including the one we are now bringing to an end, we have fought not for our selfish advantage, but to help others resist aggression. And let us be proud that by our bold new initiatives, by our steadfastness for peace with honor, we have made a breakthrough toward creating in the world what the world has not known before, a structure of peace that can last, not merely for our time, but for generations to come.
Thank you, Susie. All right, so see who you think that might be. President B, round 2. And we'll move to Kevin, President C.
Do not allow anyone to tell you that it cannot be done. No challenge can match the heart and fight and spirit of America. We will not fail. Our country will thrive and prosper again. We stand at the birth of a new millennium, ready to unlock the mysteries of space, to free the earth from the miseries of disease, and to harness the energies, industries, and technologies of tomorrow. A new national pride will stir our souls, lift our sights, and heal our divisions. It's time to remember that old wisdom our soldiers will never forget, that whether we are black or brown or white, we all bleed the same red blood of patriots. We all enjoy the same glorious freedoms, and we all salute the same great American flag. And whether a child is born in the urban sprawl of Detroit or the windswept plains of Nebraska, they all look up at the same night sky, they fill their hearts with the same dreams, and they are infused with the breath of life by the same almighty Creator. So to all Americans in every city near and far, small and large, from mountain to mountain, from ocean to ocean, hear these words: you will never be ignored again. Your voice, your hopes, and your dreams will guide our American destiny. And your kindness and goodness and love will forever guide us along the way.
Thank you, Kevin. See if you can guess who that was. Letter D. I'm sorry, letter C. I'm getting confused there for a second. Okay. And let's go to Ryan, President D.
So let us mark this day with remembrance of who we are and how far we have traveled. In the year of America's birth, in the coldest of months, a small band of patriots huddled by dying campfires on the shores of an icy river. The capital was abandoned. The enemy was advancing. The snow was stained with blood. At a moment when the outcome of our revolution was most in doubt, the father of our nation ordered these words be read to the people. Let it be told to the future world that in the depth of winter, when nothing but hope and virtue could survive, that the city and the country, alarmed at one common danger, came forth to meet it. America, in the face of our common dangers, in this winter of our hardship, let us remember these timeless words. With hope and virtue, let us brave once more the icy currents and endure what storms may come. Let it be said by our children's children that when we were tested, we refused to let this journey end, that we did not turn back, nor did we falter. And with eyes fixed on the horizon and God's grace upon us, carried forth that great gift of freedom and delivered it safely to future generations.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, log your yes. For D, and Ashley, you're going to bring us home again, round 2 with President E, please.
We are creating a nation once again vibrant, robust, and alive. But there are many mountains yet to climb. We will not rest until every American enjoys the fullness of freedom, dignity, and opportunity as our birthright. It is our birthright, as citizens of this great republic, and if we meet this challenge, these will be years when Americans have restored their confidence and tradition of progress, when our values of faith, family, work, and neighborhood were restated for a modern age, when our economy was finally freed from government's grip, when we made sincere efforts at meaningful arms reduction and by rebuilding our defenses, our economy, and developing new technologies, helped preserve peace in a troubled world, when America courageously supported the struggle for individual liberty, free enterprise, and self-government, and turned the tide of history away from totalitarian darkness and into the warm sunlight of human freedom. My fellow citizens, our nation is poised for greatness. We must do what we know is right and do it with all our might. Let history say of us, these were golden years when the American Revolution was reborn, when freedom gained new life, and America reached for her best. Our two-party system has served us, I should say, well over the years, but never better than in those times of great challenge when we came together not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Americans, united in a common cause.
Okay, so if you can, thank you, Ashley. If you can mark your guess for President E, and once you've done that, I'm going to ask you to check in with the partner that you checked in with before and see what your guesses look like now. Have they shifted? Have they changed? Are you locked in? Are you ready to go? Let's come back together. And we're actually going to put the next Poll Everywhere question up for you on your phone. So Aubrey's just put the QR code up again, and you might need to reactivate. So maybe shoot that and get it up into your phone, and then once I see most of the phones go down, we're going to have you take this next survey question. As you're taking this next survey question, it'll ask you who is President A, who is President B, etc. Each of the actors is going to come to the podium and deliver the first few lines of their speech. So it just jars your memory about the content. They're going to do it in loose verbatim, so they're going to do it in their own voices, okay? So if this is like Final Jeopardy and there's that do-do-do-do song, their speaking is that underscoring as you're filling in the survey, okay? So Aubrey, why don't you go ahead and let's activate the survey question, and let's make sure that folks can see it on their phone. Okay, you got it? All right, and one by one, the actors are going to come up with their letter for the president that they performed, and as you're hearing their words, you can cast your votes or your choices.
The promise we sought in a new land, we will find again in a land of new promise.
Above all else, the time has come for us to renew our faith in ourselves and in America.
Do not allow anyone to tell you that it cannot be done. No challenge can match the heart and fight and spirit of America.
So let us mark this day with remembrance of who we are and how far we have traveled.
We are creating a nation once again vibrant, robust, and alive. But there are many mountains yet to climb.
Great. Okay, so we'll give you just a couple more seconds to complete the survey. Why don't the five of you step forward into your line? Okay, so everybody finished? You entered? All right, great. No, Aubrey's saying we've still got some. It's all good. Okay, great. We'll take 30 seconds. Yes, right, this is my yes, I didn't rehearse that part, but, okay. That's probably 30 seconds. All right, so here's how we're gonna do this. We're going to look at results on the screens, okay? So I'm gonna ask Aubrey to bring up the who you thought President A is, and this is both our in-house audience and our live stream audience, okay? So, all right, so 56% of the audience believes that this is Jimmy Carter, okay? And 20% George W. Bush, 15% Bill Clinton, 7% George H.W. Bush, and 2% Barack Obama. Okay, so Aubrey, can you reveal the president for us, please?
The promise we sought in a new land, we will find again in a land of new promise.
Okay, there you go. So, that is our reveal. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Stay right there. Okay, all right. So, just check in with yourself for a second and think about how you made. And I'm actually being serious. How did you make your choice? Right? If the answer was correct for you, how did you arrive at it? If it was not correct for you, how did you arrive at it? Okay, excellent. Aubrey, can you show us the survey results for President B, please? Okay, 83% Richard Nixon, okay? And some variance in here, all right? No one voted for Donald Trump, okay? So there we go, all right? So, Aubrey, can you reveal for us President B, please?
Above all else, the time has come for us to renew our faith in ourselves and in America.
Okay, excellent. All right, so again, how'd you arrive at your answer? All right, let's look at the survey results for President C, please. Okay, 90% Donald Trump, and some 7% Barack Obama, and 2% each for Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan. Okay, could you please, Aubrey, reveal President C for us?
Do not allow anyone to tell you that it cannot be done. No challenge can match the heart and fight and spirit of America.
All right, okay. And let's go to President D, please, the results for President D. President D, okay, 56% Barack Obama, all right? And then some variance in here, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, each person with a vote, all right? So, Aubrey, could you reveal President D for us, please?
So let us mark this day with remembrance of who we are and how far we have traveled.
Okay, great. And let's see the final survey question result for President E, please. All right, 34% for Joe Biden, 32% for Gerald Ford, 25% for Ronald Reagan, 7% for George W. Bush, and 2% for Donald Trump. Okay, so Aubrey, can you please reveal President E for us?
We are creating a nation once again, vibrant, robust, and alive.
But there are many mountains yet to climb.
All right, so Ronald Reagan is the answer. Okay, so once again, thinking about how you arrived at your choices, all right? We are now going to move into a discussion of those choices and with our respondents. And so I'm going to ask Patrick and Emily to join us on stage in just a second. But before I do, could you please give the actors a round of applause for their work? Excellent, thank you so much. And we're gonna give them a break, and they may return during the discussion to share some of their thoughts about the experience, okay? So as we're transitioning into this setup on stage, if you could just check back in with your partner about how you did and your thoughts or your responses. I'm really delighted and happy to welcome our two respondents for this evening. Emily Fader is a teacher at the Chapin School in Manhattan, where she's a faculty member of the Upper School English Department and the Berenson Program, which is an individual study program for Class 12 students. She's taught English, history, and debate at other independent schools and the core composition and academic writing course at Columbia University. Emily is also a frequent collaborator with the Verbatim Performance Lab, so we're really happy to have her here. We've done work in her classrooms over the probably last 6 years, I think, and so it's really great to have you here in this capacity. So welcome. And to Emily's, is Patrick Egan, is a professor of politics and public policy at New York University, where he specializes in U.S. political attitudes and behavior and their impact on public policy, partisanship, and identity. He is the author of Partisan Priorities: How Issue Ownership Drives and Distorts American Politics, and his research has appeared in journals including Nature, the American Political Science Review, the American Journal of Political Science, the Journal of Politics, and the British Journal of Political Science. Welcome, Patrick.
Thanks. Great to be here.
So I think we talked a little bit beforehand about how we might respond, and so I'm just curious to know what your initial responses are to the event and then to the reveal of the different presidents. So maybe Emily, I'll toss it to you first to start.
Sure. It was interesting because I think you can kind of tell. Am I speaking all right?
You're good.
Okay. Yep. It was interesting because I think that you can sort of tell based on the historical context and the events, which I think you sort of did well to edit out to an extent, but some of them stayed in there.
Yes.
And then there were some. So just thinking about the loose verbatim, there were certain keywords and themes that I picked up on. Some presidents seem like they would be more into storytelling and kind of having us listen to them tell a story. Others seem to be more interested in sort of tapping into the negative or the people who might feel left out or abandoned. Ideas about human potential, and then sort of like right and might and golden years, and then obviously it was much easier, the type verbatim.
Yes. So you found it easier in the type verbatim?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And why?
Well, because you can kind of recognize the rhythm and the tone of the voices, and you can hear when they go up and they go down, and you can hear the sort of the melody sort of of how they talk.
Okay, great. Thank you, Pat.
And the accents, obviously.
Yes, the accents can be.
And the hand gestures.
Yes.
Well done.
Yes. Patrick, thoughts?
Yeah, first of all, hats off to the actors. They were amazing, and really, as somebody who is in the business of thinking about U.S. politics quite a lot, it helped me understand this task that an inaugurated president has before him so far, and how they approach that task, and how the similarities in that approach, that all of these speeches, certainly these excerpts, bore much more similarity to one another than distinction, right? And so I think that's important to kind of note. Certainly it was the case that the tight verbatim performances moved me into a more confident direction on the speeches, except one, actually. It moved me away from the right answer to the wrong answer on the last one, actually. So I don't know about you all, but I think of Reagan as the great communicator, and to see this sort of halting speech where then he makes a mistake really threw me off in terms of thinking it was Reagan. I went to one of the Bushes, because that seems like their kind of signature move, right? But the other thing, and I think, Emily, I'll echo what you said, there were a number of terms, signature terms that these presidents used. So I wrote down ignore during Trump's speech. You will not be ignored. That's just a classic part of Trump's appeal. Clinton had a lot of kind of 1990s techno-wonk speak, like underclass, bioweapons, information age, right? And Reagan, I originally thought it was Reagan, candidate E, because he talked about free enterprise, which of course is his signature theme. So I think that was interesting to reflect on the extent to which those themes both distinguish, but also are commonalities among these 5 people.
And so something that I didn't say in the opening is that when we were working on selecting excerpts, the research assistant that was working with us, the research dramaturg, she called me and she said, each of these speeches across has this like rah-rah America kind of moment, right? Like this, and I said, oh yes, that's American exceptionalism. And she said, right. And so all 5 speeches you heard, we had coded for this theme of American exceptionalism. And I think that both things that you're both raising points here around the rhetoric that folks use in these speeches to kind of try to rally a country in a moment at a beginning. And I think that has been revealing for us as we've worked on them, that they are not, these speeches are not dissimilar, as you were saying, in their intent and their content. I'm curious what your experience was hearing them out of different bodied actors. You know, how did that play into, even if you knew that, oh, this is who this person is, what was the experience of watching it in these different bodied actors?
Should I go? Okay. Well, first, I think that what you guys do is so amazing, and you should explain what coding is briefly so that your audience knows, because I think that, at least working with you guys, with you and Keith in the classroom, it's really interesting because we have the kids have the script, but it's not just a script, it's not just a transcript, it's
You're explaining it really well. I think you should keep going. Yeah.
No, I think you...
No, I explain it all the time. I think you should do it. Yeah.
And so what we do is we have the students, usually older students, seniors, listen to, well, actually 10th graders too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We have them listen to the original speech and sort of break apart the transcript and sort of add in the ums and add in all the things that generally get erased when it gets published. And then they start to hear the sort of the rhythm of the speech, when the voice goes up or when it stops or when there's a pause. So they make their own keys to mark everything up. And that's how they get to know the speaker really well, mm-hmm. I think.
Yeah.
And so I think that it was fun to see the actors do it because it's obviously a different caliber than when we just do mm-hmm. it in the classroom and none of us have any practice or acting experience. So I think for me, it was interesting to see different, I don't know. I guess I'm having a hard time answering that because honestly, I felt like they did it so well. And sadly, most of our presidents have looked so similar to one another that it already felt like I took it for granted that none of these people was going to be one of those people.
Got it. Okay. All right. Yep. Totally. Fair observation. Patrick,
I would say, my experience, it was very interesting to go, I'll give you 2 examples. So I knew it was Trump from the get-go, and especially, as I said, the word ignore just really keyed me off Trump. And so Kevin, right, the actor mm-hmm. who played Trump, he played that first round like really non-Trumpy, right? I mean, like that was not Trump delivering that speech. That was, a kind of almost like a blank slate. And so it was so interesting to see what was added when he went into tight verbatim. And in that case, it was a lot, right? So the hand gestures, the kind of the Queen's New York accent, and even kind of the tonality, it really kind of added a lot of the emotion to what President Trump was saying. And so I think and I'm sure this must be part of the reason why you all do this, but you really are able to kind of distinguish between the power of the words themselves and the person who is infusing their personality into those words, mm-hmm. as we saw in the second round. And so that for me was fascinating and sort of provocative in a way that I didn't expect.
So something that I'm curious for both of you to maybe related to this is when our projection designer was working on the projections and I shared the transcripts with him, he said, you know, these speeches are written by a speechwriter for a specific individual. And you're asking actors who were never meant to deliver these words to deliver them. And sort of that's really kind of the experiment, I think, and what you're getting at. And so I just wonder, like, what is the value from your perspectives of doing it? Like, what do we gain from suddenly becoming aware of the speechwriter, suddenly becoming aware of maybe how the rhetorical devices are being used in the speeches? I know we didn't talk about that one. I just threw that.
I think a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think that we gain a sense of what was important at the time. I think it gives an insight into how did this person win, and their sort of the extent or lack of extent of their attempt to connect and bring people in who did not vote for them. It's also really not an improvised situation for the politician. Like,
Right.
as you said, it's often more than one speechwriter, I think. So it's really, but how do you capture the tone? And so for me, just knowing the most about Clinton, I found that the themes he was sort of, I guess you would say, preoccupied with are those which he was preoccupied with for his entire political life before and his entire life as a private citizen, even after he was president. And so I think that there's the speechwriter's faithfulness to that and to some of the words and Obama's storytelling. And I guess, you know, if you read the newspaper and the analysis, Obama wrote much of it himself, maybe. And so I think that he likes that. And that storytelling. So I think that it's reflective of the principal, the person that the speechwriter is writing for, as well as what they want people to hear so they will like them.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say the loose verbatim reveals the kind of generic nature of these speeches, right? Because they're not attached to specific personages in an obvious way. And I wonder if folks in the audience had the experience of liking the speech of a person they turned out to hate, or vice versa, right? And so if that happened, and it must have happened because there's a lot of people who said, you know, Donald Trump's speech was Obama's or vice versa, that kind of uncovers the kind of consistency of the task before these men as they approach the nation. And I actually find that somewhat reassuring, that, you know, if we think about how, especially at moments like this where we're worried about the country staying together, well, there were a number of presidents, I think Nixon is probably the best example, who kind of were in a similar point. He's talking about the Vietnam War, ending the Vietnam War, et cetera, right? And for all of the nation's flaws and drawbacks, the idea that time after time, and this is probably true of Coolidge too, that they had to kind of approach this task in a similar way is I think, that's an important thing to understand and recognize.
So we're going to open it up to the audience in just a second, but I wanted to just briefly, because you reminded me in that comment there, Patrick, about something we talked about yesterday, which is where this project kind of came from. And this time last year, we were sharing out excerpts of interviews that we had conducted with folks in 2024 about what they wanted from an American president. Rather than interview folks about the election, we wanted to interview folks about what they wanted from a president. And we did a version of this at NYU's campus in Washington, D.C. in late October. And there were students in the audience, there were younger staff members from that campus in the audience. And we got to the discussion, and in that particular set of transcripts, there were 2 or 3 moments where folks had spoken about how inspired they were by a president's words or actions. And there was a moment in the conversation where one of the students raised his hand and said, I'm not inspired by any political figure. Like, I'm not inspired by, and then somebody else said, yeah, me too. And I just did a quick straw poll in that moment. I said, how many of you feel this way? And all these hands went up in the room. And then they proceeded to say who they were inspired by, which were sports figures, musicians, artists. And I thought, oh boy, we have some work to do, right? Around, and my colleague Keith and I had thought about doing something with presidential speeches in conjunction with that interview project, but we set it aside. And after we had that experience, we said, oh no, we should probably look at these speeches. And so, inspired by responses from students, this project sort of emerges. And when we were talking about that yesterday, Patrick, you talked about reflective patriotism. And I thought that was, that's a concept that you introduced me to in that conversation. And I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about where that term comes from and how you feel it applies to what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a concept introduced by Alexis de Tocqueville when he was visiting the U.S. and writing about us in the early days of our nation's history. And he talked about this, Tocqueville's from France, and so he's contrasting the American story with that of Europe, and says Americans have this reflective patriotism, which is less instinctive, less knee-jerk, is not about no less love for the country, but it's a love that is realistic and more acknowledging of a country's flaws than the monarchies of Europe, where he was, kind of more familiar with. And I think that is maybe a helpful idea for the present moment, when I think we've spent a lot of time, I think rightfully so, acknowledging the flaws and drawbacks of our nation's history and the imperfections in which we still live. But I think it's a mistake to dwell only in those places and instead to think about the ways that America can and sometimes has delivered on the promises, those great promises in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And in that sense, because then we can actually recognize the progress. And we recognize that Rosa Parks did not act in vain, right? That Harvey Milk was not slain in vain, right? And so if we're kind of aware of how these things are both the good and the bad, the dark and the light, that reflective patriotism is something that I think is helpful, maybe a helpful concept for all of us. And you can think about it, whether it's helpful for you.
Thanks for that. We want to open it up to the audience. My colleague Anid is here. We're going to run a microphone to you if you have a thought or a question that you want to raise. Maybe we'll bring the actors out on stage also. So if you want to come back out and bring your chairs down, and if there are any thoughts or comments to them, we'll just pass the mics back to them. But any thoughts that you'd like to share based on your experience or what you heard? Yeah, Amy, we're going to get you a microphone as soon as and Anid will bring you the microphone, or we'll pass it down. Thanks, Anid.
So I just would love to hear a little bit more about the data set. In looking at these presidents, we're looking at all of them as two-term presidents, right? And so my gut instinct here is that we're looking at first inaugural addresses and not second. Is that true? Because there was a sense of a recovery in all of them that was really interesting, like a pivot. And that felt really first inaugural to me. But in the reveal and realizing that everybody has served multiple terms, I would wondering if you could just illuminate that for us.
Yeah, I knew someone was going to ask this, so I wrote it down. I checked it before. So let's go in order. So Clinton, that was his second inaugural. Then for Nixon, that was his second inaugural. For Trump, that was his first inaugural. For Obama, that was his first inaugural. And for Reagan, that was his second inaugural. And something that Ashley and I talked quite a bit about in the Reagan is that, for those of you that know about the second inaugural, that was indoors. And so there's something different delivering a speech indoors. So some of the quietness of that speech, which I thought you captured so beautifully, is because there's a difference between standing on the mall and yelling, right, to thousands of people versus being in the rotunda and delivering a very kind of subdued and sort of more contained speech. And so those were the kind of, like my colleague Keith calls them, Easter eggs that were kind of in there. Also, like, yeah, please.
I just wanted to note, one of the things that I thought was brilliant was the way that you were kind of looking up in the rotunda. It was like, it was choice, it was perfect. Do I need to say it again?
We got it. The way that Ashley as Reagan was looking up and around the rotunda. Yes, we talked about like where's the eye line going, and that was something that you picked up.
Something that came up for us is because Susie and I are both. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
that's not going to work.
Here we go.
Oh my goodness. Because Nixon and Reagan were both pre-teleprompter. So they're both reading speeches that are down here versus something that allows for access to the audience. And that was something we talked about a lot. And for Reagan in particular, like, was here so much of the speech, and how even just the technology shift changes our access to the person was really interesting too.
Other thoughts or questions that come up for folks?
I was wondering if any of the actors came to think differently about their candidate after they went through this. You like them more or dislike them, or whichever. I mean, sort of, did anything change?
Yes. I wasn't raised in the U.S., so my understanding of a lot of these presidents was very vague. And Clinton, my thoughts on him weren't necessarily kind. And I knew more about his wife than I knew about him. But having to like pause when he paused and think through the thought process as he thought through it, I was like, oh, darn. I guess he's human too. It is quite fascinating in a time of complete polarization, and we like to dehumanize those who do not agree with us. How sitting in someone's words and sitting in their speech pattern forces you to confront the fact that they very much are human. And one of the things about Clinton that I found, I was like, okay, maybe we could agree on this, was anytime he spoke of children, there was a tenor in his voice that rang true. How much of that truth was a performance is up for debate. But I think compared to the rest of the speech's lines, whenever he spoke of children, I felt it kind of slip into this place in his chest that felt that he was relating it back to his own family. And I think in today's world, where children maybe are not held, or all children aren't held as precious as they should be, that for me was really important.
Thanks, Mary.
I don't really want to follow that, but I will. Yeah, I mean, I think I had forgotten about Nixon, that like he created the EPA and OSHA and like all these things where I'm like, what, dude? Like, so you know, the persona of Nixon to me was always like Watergate and I'm not a crook kind of stuff, and you won't have Nixon to kick around, this petulant kind of dude, you know. But then I was like, oh, he did some good things. So it made me think about like, right, the complexity, because right now we are so prone to this black and white thing. They're on this side or they're on that side, and that I think also colors even the way we begin to look at historical figures, right? Well, they were Republicans, so they're on this side, but that was definitely not true. And also, Joe and I talked in coaching sessions about, I found him physically to be this like a little kid, like trying to get free, you know, and trying to just like tell everybody off for not liking him and not being able to do that. And so that, again, it was like, okay, this is a guy, this is a person who has big feelings like all of us.
You know, so yeah, it was. I agree with Mary. It was very humanizing and a real opportunity for relativism, right? In a world right now where that is, we don't always hold space for that. This is not a time for that.
We were working with kind of straight-on video, like a key camera, and we found that if we looked for alternative views that revealed the full body, that gave us a lot of information about what. And this is a prime example of that. That we learned a lot about what was happening for Nixon if we looked at another view. So, yeah, please.
I have a question for the actors, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So, and we talked about this a little bit a minute ago. So you're doing a performance of somebody who's doing a performance, right? But they're also performing themselves, right? So it's such an interesting meta kind of experience. I just wonder if that ended up, that gave you any interesting insights on what it's like to be an actor, what it's like to pretend to play a famous person. I don't know. It seems like a very unusual moment for you to get some insight.
And Reagan is an actor. And so it was like the layers and the layers and the layers and the layers. And I think what was fascinating for me in that experience was, I think this idea of the right communicator, these images are stunning in this speech. It reads like Shakespeare when you sort of take away some of the affect, and it's half of the selection that I did was one sentence, like one perfectly grammatically correct, very Shakespearean, and this comma, and another third thing, and a third thing that leads to this thing. So it rang to me as someone who understands language can give this speech in a way that someone else could not. And this idea of like the being written for a person, the folks who wrote this speech understood that he had a very particular skill. And so that was fascinating too, the layers, and then the moments when he makes a mistake or a flub, he catches it so specifically, I think because he is so precise and so clear with the images and with the metaphors that he has some of these little like kind of smirks to himself when he makes a mistake, because I think he's so aware of it because of how he is trained and his relationship to the language. But yeah, it was fascinating.
I'll jump in a little bit. So that performativity aspect that you just mentioned was a great in for me, particularly with Obama, specifically in the way that he almost sings. So when I was kind of working on the speech pattern in particular, I found, and I sing a little bit myself, and so I found that like approaching it as if I'm singing a song was sort of a way to into the material. And in fact, when I then had to go back and then loosen up the verbatim, it was a challenge for me because that song was like ingrained in the way that I was portraying the speech. So it was both like a tool and a hindrance a little bit when I was trying to like loosen it up a little bit.
I'll share something from one of our rehearsals that I did with Joe's. I think in the first one, I expressed some concern about performing Trump just because I'm not his biggest fan. And I felt that, and I think it came out in the first couple of times I did it, that feeling was affecting my performance because I had an idea of who that person was and wanted that to be my version to an extent, right? Or subconsciously something was happening. And then in the second rehearsal and kind of, so I think, one of the notes was maybe pull back on that a little bit, which was certainly good. And it became a moment for reflection about, am I being clouded by this bias, right? Because I do have to represent the person as they are. And then I found in the second rehearsal that I did with Joe, like this extra layer that I could add on to kind of like guide me in some of the sections where I would label them bedtime story, right? Like, and there are moments in the speech where it feels very much like I think the bits are like a new national pride will stir our souls, and then the and whether a child is born in the urban sprawl of Detroit, like that stuff is very different from the blood of patriot stuff, right? And so it did challenge me to put aside my bias and try and find tools to really represent what was happening with Trump's cadence there. Yeah.
I think, and these reflections that the actors have, I like to think that they know a little more about these presidents than even folks that spend a lot of time studying them, because they're sitting in their patterns. Christy, I'll hand it off to you.
So I think, and maybe I'm speaking for a lot of us in the audience, there were moments in each of your performances where it was like, when Obama started taking us to church, like he's it's like, you're like, when Trump did a hand movement, when Nixon, you kind of snarled your mouth, these are my moments for me. Reagan, you totally confused me because I did have you great communicator. So I had you as Ford because I thought, someone that's shy. Like, I don't think of Reagan as shy. This person was coming across as shy. But my question is for each of you, was there, because I can't imagine how many times you had to do this, over and over and over again. But were there moments for you when it internally clicked and you're like, I got him? Like, you felt, there was something that you felt that really embodied that person for you? And what was that? Was it a word, like Pat was saying, there were key words, or was it a gesture? Like, what was it?
Great. Maybe we'll go down the line, but whoever wants to start can.
I'll start. For me, it always comes in layers, right? So when you come to a piece, all the layers can't be there all at once, right? We start with sort of maybe vowels or consonants, and then you start to layer things on. And then it usually really clicks for me once everything is in place. And then Joe and I work to like go even a little deeper. So you have the physicality, you have the voice, you have the gesture, you have the placement, you have the uhs and ums and the pauses and the breath. But then like, it usually only clicks for me when we're like, okay, but what's happening now, right? What's happening to you? And Joe and I have talked a lot about how, like, when we all put our bodies in the same shape as these people and make the same noises that they make, something happens to our bodies. And if we pay attention to that, we end up theoretically learning something about this person's state of mind in that moment. And so that's the moment where it really clicks for me, when all the layers are there physically and vocally, but then we get together and ask like, okay, but what's happening to you, the person, the actor who's embodying that? And then it really clicks. And for us, it was kind of like McShifty dude, like what is that? What is going on and what's happening to me? And I felt really angry. Like when I felt this, like, I'm angry, but I can't be, I'm like, and so then that reinforces and reinforms kind of the performance as well.
Okay. Clinton's from Arkansas, which, like, I had no concept, really, of what someone from Arkansas sounded like. As it was up until a year ago, I thought it was pronounced Arkansas. So, and there is an interesting thing to Clinton where, especially because this is his second inaugural speech, there's a comfort, like he knows what he's doing and he's comfortable in his space. And we were talking about it, like once I got the accent down, and it's similar to the Obama in that the speech is there. You can slip into this, almost costume of this character. And one of the words for me was like, he says, I would say mighty. He says, I can't say we will stand, I can't even say it out of the like rhythm of his speech. But then it was interesting because I still felt surface level. And then when we were challenged in a rehearsal with Joe, when the first time we did the loose verbatim, I literally went to Joe, I was like, I feel really naked right now. Because you're forced to confront, there is a speechwriter that is there writing these speeches, but then also what these words mean to you might be something different to what they mean to the president himself. So we talk about this element of them becoming human to us, in having to go through that speech and relate it to my own experience, especially that line where he says, we will hear our streets will echo again with the laughter of our children because no one will try to shoot them. that is when it clicked, and who he is as an individual, not as an emblem, not as even necessarily as a president, who he is as an individual and what he strove for, especially watching a lot of his speeches pre and post his presidency. It is quite. And then and then for Clinton, he's a physical, he likes to stroke things. And so it's really fascinating if you watch his speech, he's just kind of stroking the podium. And like, this isn't even as tall as the podium he has. And so he literally like leans into it at times. And it's like, oh dear, this is how you got yourself in trouble. So it was like the combination of that human element, but then this almost like comedic element of like this man pawing this podium. So that was like the two elements where he clicked for me.
Okay, we've got one over here.
Yeah.
I think Susie kind of summed it up for me for the most part. I think that was a great kind of way of describing the process, and like it really I think comes together like over time. I don't think there's ever really a moment where it clicks. It's more of like the steady layering on of all of the different things, and then I don't know, maybe like doing it here for the first, like this was where it clicked for the first time because it's, you know, it's live, it's in front of the audience. But yeah, I don't know. It's more of a journey, I would say. Yeah.
I'll just add a little bit because I agree with what has been said in terms of the layering and whatnot. For me, I started with the very first like quarter and just did that over and over and over again until there was like a hook, almost, as I would describe it. Like I hear the line in my head as Obama said it, and then as an actor, I can like hook into the rest of the speech as long as I get that one line right. And I made that the first line, which is a useful tool. And then what else? The other thing that I wanted to mention is just there was a little bit of self-consciousness as well in the process. And so I don't know that it really clicked for me until I did it for Joe in the rehearsal, and I got some of that feedback that like, okay, you're on the right pathway, because I think anytime you're portraying someone else, especially someone that you maybe respect, you want to do a good job. And so I wasn't quite really ready to give myself any kind of like gold star until I had a rehearsal and he was like, you're onto something, keep going in that way. So yeah, that was kind of my experience.
Agreeing with what everybody has said, I feel like I always have to have the rehearsal where I cry one time and I like process my own human emotions about the thing. And for me, that was the line of turning the tide of history away from totalitarian darkness and into the warm sunlight of human freedom, which is just a gorgeous image. And I like couldn't get through it. And I had to do the version where I just like let myself have my feelings about that to be able to come to, because I was like, I needed to go through me to come back to this other person, and me having a big emotional experience there is not this person. So how do I process this through myself and release that and like say thank you to that experience to get back to this other person? Yeah. And then there's just these gorgeous images, and then we free enterprise, free our economy, and just these little like spurts of things. I was like, yeah, I'm driving with this, and things happen, and you're like, whoa! But sort of the cognitive dissonance is also there in a really interesting way. But yeah, and the, like those things where you're like, oh, we know who we're talking about now.
I am aware that we are at time, and so I do think we should land the plane here. It's a nice place to end. But I want to just take an opportunity to thank the actors again for their work, and and also Patrick Egan and Emily Fader for responding to the performance. And our co-sponsors, the John Brademas Center, our whole Verbatim Performance Lab team, our house staff here in the Black Box Theater from the Department of Music and Performing Arts Professions, the Dean's Group at the Steinhardt School for all their ongoing support, and Tony Urbano and her colleagues at NYU TV for giving us an amazing live stream. So thank you for being here with us. Thank you for being here with us, and have a great rest of your evening.